Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Leadership Greater Washington Frontline Conversation, where we talk with our members about how they are maneuvering through the COVID pandemic and then through the racial unrest and through a lot of other things. So today we've got Bettina Stern, the class of 2020, who is the founder and owner of Chaia Tacos with her partner, Suzanne. And Bettina, welcome. We're very happy to have you with us today.
So thrilled to be here. Happy that I had this amazing experience with LGW, and class of 2020 is virtually unstoppable. And here I am in the restaurant business, virtually unstoppable, or at least trying to be.
So how are you feeling? How's your family feeling? How are your employees feeling? How's everybody's health?
Everybody's health is great, actually. I think we're all feeling steady right now. I think that goes across the board with both my family, meaning my husband, my 3 sons, my daughter-in-law. And the same goes for my business. You know, we never closed our doors. We didn't shut the business down except for 1 week, the very first week in June, when we did close our doors for 1 week to take a rest and reflect. But when the pandemic began, not only had I been very aware that something was coming and feeling and talking about preparing for it with my staff, my colleagues, but it came pretty hard and fast in terms of, yes, we're shutting the doors today. They're still open for business, but you can no longer walk in. And being an elevated fast casual restaurant meant that we could pretty easily just pivot to extending that hospitality simply out the door. We could no longer invite our guests in, but it didn't mean we couldn't still provide for them. So that pivot was fairly seamless. There were a few little things like bag stickers and staplers that we had to get, but for the most part, that was not the hardest part. The hardest part of pivoting in the pandemic were those first few months when we had to just scramble for grants and loans and fill out all the paperwork for the PPP and figure out trying to work 7 days a week and stay sane. And it kind of came crashing down after about 3 months for me personally. I reflected through that, got through that, and we steadied out. And even today, when much of the country is having to take a step back, I think we're poised just to keep doing business as usual, because DC, for one, has never left stage 2 or phase 2 of the pandemic. And so we're kind of already in it, doing exactly what we need to do, which is to take care of our guests, take care of our employees, take care of ourselves as safely, securely, healthfully as possible. Our staff is great. Their health and their mental well-being, I think, is really good. We didn't ever really let anybody go, because between the 2 locations that we had about 30 employees, but half of them were students. So they just all left and went home, and that was good. That was the right thing for them to do. They needed to keep their studies going and stuff. But the rest of the staff has, they either took some time off because they were not comfortable coming back to work. And those that wanted to work, for the most part, we were able to employ, if not full-time, at least part-time. And then that's continued to bump up as things have gotten better. It may bump back down a little bit. We may have to rejigger the schedule again, but we're all kind of prepared for it. So thanks for asking.
So I remember when your class went virtual, and when we all went virtual. I mean, we started working from home, although the new phrase now is living at work. We're not working from home, we're living at work. But you literally were living at work. I mean, you would join the class from your restaurant. You'd be working in the restaurant while you're sitting there on the computer talking with us in the class. Um, and as you said, the first 3 months was a lot of work, and I remember you saying you got to take a week off just to catch your breath and see what you need to do and all that. So, what was that process like? What was your sort of recovery period for a week like? And
Well, I think we'd gotten through all the nitty gritties of the paperwork. We'd done as much as we could. We were at a place where we were, there wasn't anything more than of that we could do. But forcing ourselves to close came on the heels of George Floyd. And, the city took a deep breath and we closed up the shop. My employees went off and took a day at the beach, or a couple days at the beach, or they just put their feet up because they'd all been working just as hard. For myself personally, I went to the country to visit with family friends. I had already implemented putting meditation back into my practice, daily practice. And I made that something I did first thing in the morning, sometimes with a cup of coffee, so that it wouldn't get lost. Exercise, which is super important to me, not only for my physical health, but for my mental health, was something that I had to take a little bit, I wouldn't say a breather on, because what I would do is walk to work every day and walk home. But I started to put in the sort of more sweaty stuff back in on a daily basis. And that was completely helpful. And I also said, I'm not working on weekends anymore. If this costs us more money, then it costs us more money. But Suzanne and I decided, forget it, we need some time off. So we did. We decided that other people could handle that. We had plenty of wonderful teammates, and we started to take a break from working all the time and feeling completely having to be in control and there at every moment. So, we just started taking care of ourselves, and that's continued and been better since then. So,
and it seems to have really made a difference, I think, in your approach to things, because again, in these conversations that you and I would have, you really were getting down, I think.
Yeah, it was really hard.
Are we going to make this, and is it worth making it? And then you recharged and said this, you actually were very recharged and very sort of excited to get back to it and get back to growing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you either sink or you swim, and I don't really think we have the choice of sinking. I didn't spend all this time putting this amazing brand and concept on paper and then into action to just let it fail. We're employing people who are hardworking. Our customers love what we're doing. We know that the concept is completely timely and that the brand resonates with a lot of different people. We've seen, since we founded this company initially in a 10 by 10 foot tent at the farmers market in 2013, that diets and attitudes toward eating more vegetables has actually changed. I mean, we took this concept of hand griddling corn tortillas and filling them with seasonal, local, really, truly deliciously cooked vegetables could be completely satiating and mouthwatering and craveable, and that you might actually want to eat it multiple times a week. And so I'm not prepared to let that die. So how do I work really hard to actually not only survive what we're in, and now we sort of can see the end in sight, that there is going to be an end in sight of this pandemic, and come out thriving. We've begun to look at potential pop-up locations in the area. And so that feels really good. What can we go back to our investors with and say, hey, we didn't just sit around and worry ourselves. We actually got busy and worked hard to create efficiencies and strategies on how to grow this business. Because as I've often said, I don't want the epithet on my tombstone to say she owned a taco shop or two. So it was always about a replicable product, a replicable brand idea that could go national, that has the means and the ways and the good stuff to make it happen. So we're back to working on growing the business now, which feels really good.
So I do want to talk about the future, and your growth plans. But before that, talk to me about how you got started. I mean, what you were from the publishing world. I think your first job was at the Barefoot Contessa, if I
Yep, that's right. My
so,
very first.
so your first job was a restaurant. So what brought you to the restaurant world and this idea, and how did you get it? How did you get it going?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I've always wanted to do something from the ground up, something creative, something that actually was fun and probably provided the background for good music and a glass of bubbly. So there was always an insistence that Chaia should have beer and wine on the menu, and now we actually have margaritas on tap. But the point being that I had really wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And my first job was with Ina Garten at the Barefoot Contessa. I was in my late teens. I was in high school into college. I worked for her for many summers, and before she moved to her East Hampton location. So I was there at her original location. And she was really an inspiration. I remember her having she told me she had a midlife crisis, and she was 30 years old at the time when she had that midlife crisis. And in my inimitable 17-year-old self, I thought, people don't have midlife crises when they're 30. You have to be 40 to have a midlife crisis. Little did I get what it would be like to grow up and go through lots of different phases of your life. But so when I graduated from college, I actually went into publishing, as you mentioned, and I helped start a number of magazines, including Condé Nast Traveler, and then a magazine so that was Condé Nast Publications, and then I went to Hearst and started a magazine there. And those were all really creative and fun because I was in the editorial department. So we were putting the content together. We were producing the stories and hiring the photographers and the writers. And it was super cool. And then I began to have babies, and we moved out of New York City. And we, as I said before the Zoom call started, that I kind of came to Washington, D.C. from New York kicking and screaming because I had lived here one summer while I was in college and I hated it. It was hot. We lived in an in-law apartment in DuPont Circle, and it was dark and stuffy, and everybody talked politics and nobody knew how to dress. And I was like, oh, and there was nowhere to eat. And I thought, I can't move to that town. But we moved here and had babies and created a life here. And I worked part-time. I did magazine publishing work, and then I moved and I did some art consulting, and I had a myriad of sort of part-time jobs, and met my business partner Suzanne along the way and bonded over food. And the story went that she joined a cookbook club that I'd formed with 4 other women, and we cooked through cookbooks, and it was really fun. And it made it in the story of it made it into Oprah magazine. And like, basically it was all about food, and it was about fun, and it was the same sort of idea. But Suzanne and I were a little bored with our lives and wanted to, she was game to start thinking of some business ideas with me. And there were a number of iterations, from an initial food truck that had nothing to do with tacos, but the idea of bringing decent food to this town. And that wasn't going to work because each of us had 3 children, and we weren't going to spend the day in a food truck because that was completely overwhelming to us. And then we decided we would start writing about food and teach people to have confidence in their kitchen. And we started a food blog before there really were even food blogs. And we had a bunch of loyal followers, maybe several thousand, but it never really went anywhere. We didn't know how to monetize it, but we started making these connections in town. And that's how we began to meet folks who were making a difference here. And we were invited into a restaurant competition and asked to come up with a startup restaurant idea. And because of the work we'd been doing, and because our diets and the way we were feeding our family and friends had begun to be more plant forward and healthier and based around farm to table foods, we came up with this idea to hand griddle corn tortillas and fill them with vegetables. And essentially that restaurant startup competition became what we are today, because the folks at the Fresh Farm Market said, we love this. You're sourcing from our producers and our farmers, come taste it out, come test it out. Just choose whatever farmer's market you want to go to. We'd love to have you. And so we said, okay, a great idea. And we picked the White House Farmers Market because it seemed to be your least farmers market-y farmers market. You know, it was really just hungry people in the middle of the day. So we knew we could test it out with all different kinds of men and women and longtime bureaucrats and visiting diplomats. And we were about a stone's throw from the Obama White House. So we got the White House folks would come, and we'd get the lawyers, and we'd get the office workers. And it was great because it was a super testing ground to say, here, we're making a roasted butternut squash taco. What do you think? You know, no, there's no chicken in it. And within 6 weeks of opening up at that farmer's market, the Washington Post had written about us. And by the end of the 6 months at that farmer's market, we had been named one of the top 9 tastemakers. So we, in the city. So we realized, oh, wow, this crazy concept based around mushroom tacos and creamy kale and potato tacos actually has something to it. So we made it through we got invited into the DuPont Circle Farmers Market, realized we could source vegetables locally throughout the winter. And the hardest months, April is the cruelest month, I will tell you, because there's very little left in the root stores. So the root sellers. And we began writing a business plan. And in November 19th, tomorrow, will be our 5th anniversary of our first store in Georgetown, which hit it out of the park. That store has been, and it was a great location. It's a beautiful space. It's the right box economics. And it's just always been our best performing store. We are also downtown in a really beautiful location. Unfortunately, downtown right now is completely dead. But we have really wonderful landlords for both buildings who have been so generous and so good to us and don't want us to leave and know that we're an amenity for their neighborhoods. And so we're using the Chinatown shop as, I mean, it's open every day except for Sundays now, but we're using it as a commissary idea for testing out what looking at popping up in other locations will be. So that's been a really good place for us to start the next phase of what Chaia will be. And I'll take a breath.
How did you pick the Georgetown location? How did you pick the locations you picked, and what went into that? And, or is it just that, gee, Georgetown sounds great, let's try that?
So I was hesitant on Georgetown. My business partner lives in Upper Georgetown, really. Maybe it's Glover, closer to Glover Park, but she was convinced that the neighborhood could use us, and she was definitely right. You know, I mean, it's filled with at the time, it's changed a little bit since we've come, but mostly chain stores and nothing healthy, and no really affordable lunch that's not super unhealthy if there was something. And honestly, Georgetown needed something hip and cool and different and diverse and locally made. And our broker at the time went to show us this building. And if you've ever seen the building, you would know it suits us absolutely perfectly. It's a little standalone. There's nothing on any side of it, gambrel roofed, so you think of a barn. We are farm to taco, and it just made absolute sense. And we walked in through the original wooden double doors into this space, and my jaw dropped because I couldn't imagine any better place for us to ever be. The building was built it was almost 85 years old, I think, and was built by our landlord's grandfather as a general contracting and fine woodworking business. And that's what it was for 80 years. The same exact business through 3 generations of Steinbreaker men. The upstairs was the drafting table and the office, and the downstairs was the workroom. And Literally, it was all original. And we walked in and didn't change it very much. Initially, we made an offer and we lost it to, we believe it was Warby Parker. And then they pulled, and I was devastated. I was like, oh my God, you're so right. This is exactly where we have to be in this building. We'll never find anything as perfect as this for our initial building that has so much charm. And we lost it. And I went straight to the paper source and I got a fancy scrapbook and then pulled all the press that had been written about us, cut it out. We took drawings of what it might look like. This is before even hiring an architect. We made it up and basically put together this lookbook of what we were thinking and said, please, please, please reconsider. And he called us back and said, let's talk. And the rest is history. And it was really great because, you know, you hear these stories about landlords and sometimes they're super negative. And, you know, our landlord came to us this summer, sent us a note in a pretty gift, you know, in a pretty greeting card with a check for $1,000 in it. We hadn't paid him a dime in rent because of the pandemic, and which was fine. That had been agreed upon. But he sent us a check for $1,000 and said, I know you'll know what to do with this. We're not in DC right now. We're not in Georgetown, and we want to help somehow. So one of the things, like many restaurants did, we fed the front lines and we partnered with organizations that were connecting us to the hospitals and the frontline workers. And some of those include my dear classmates who supported that effort. And we fed people with the funds that our landlord gave us. So it's pretty great.
It is a great story. What a great story. Now the farm to taco, how did you establish relationships with the farmers and get that sort of line moving for you? And how has that worked during the pandemic?
Well, it's sort of changed over the 5-year period, but that wasn't really that hard because, you know, we started out in the farmers market and those are the farmers bringing food to market. But at the time, and it's probably been almost 2 years since Tuscarora Organic Growers actually disbanded, but it was a consortium of 15 to 30, depending on the year and time, of organic farmers, mostly in the Lancaster, Pennsylvania region, mostly Amish farmers who brought all of their wares, their crops and their harvests to a central location run by Jim, I can't think of his last name right now, of New Morning Farm. And all the food, everything would come in aggregated, and then it would all go out as part of the Tuscarora Organic Growers Cooperative to restaurants, chefs, farmers markets. And so we would order that way and have almost predominantly, you know, 98% organics. That cooperative's folded, but some of those farmers have come together in another consortium. So we're sourcing from them. You know, our best practices are always seasonal, local, close by. Organic is high up there. It's not always possible, but, you know, honestly, I'm not trying to tell you not to eat meat. I'm just trying to get you to eat your vegetables. I am omnivorous, everybody. I actually eat and drink anything for the most part, but I do eat a predominantly plant forward diet. So.
Well, I really wanted to have this conversation with you because I did not live it nearly as badly or as deeply as you did. But again, in these talks that we would have, just conversations back and forth from time to time, I really sort of lived your experience. And when I heard you were looking to grow, to start some pop-ups, I said, wow, that's a story that I think we need to talk about. Because in this time, everybody is hunkering down, everybody is shutting down, and you're looking to expand and to do things. And you said your Chinatown store will now be your commissary. So to explain the pop-ups and what you're looking at and how you're gonna make that work for you.
So the first space we were looking at, unfortunately, is lost to us, but it was a great location in Alexandria. So we're looking at opportunities to go into neighborhoods where we believe that we have a clientele that is interested in the kind of food that we make. And that is a pretty diverse group of people. So it's always been about foot traffic for us. That's a little harder now that we're in a pandemic and it's winter, but they do come, that will happen again. This will end someday. But we are looking at spaces. Some of those spaces are spaces that other businesses who decided to pull out, be they a big chain who said, this is an underperforming unit, we're going to move out of here and just concentrate on this, on the shops that are doing better, or it's someone, it may be a location that's failed or has had enough. The box economics of it mean it doesn't have to be very big. If we're using a central commissary to do a lot of production and then transport it day of, we don't need that much per se. And those are the things we're kind of looking at right now. Are we going to need an oven or a griddle, or can we get away without those extra costs? Because it'd be great to pop into areas and not have to spend really much money at all, other than kind of advertising and marketing and putting some branding out on the windows and awnings or whatever. So if we were able to do it in the farmer's market using fold-up tents, fold-up tents and fold-up tables and little tabletop burners, I think we can probably do it in a larger space than that. I mean, in the heyday of the farmer's market, we would have 8 people stuffed into our 10 by 10 foot tents, which in February when it was freezing cold out was a good way to stay warm, I guess. But, it was funny.
So what locations are you looking at? You said Alexandria was one.
Well, Alexandria, I think right now what we've been thinking about and concentrating more on is Alexandria, Clarendon, Roslyn, Bethesda. So not somewhere out of the region and not somewhere so far away that I can't get there. But continuing to model for expansion, because as we try to systemize the efficiencies and the operations, we need to do that where we're able to kind of test it out and see it ourselves. People often ask if we're ready to franchise. Well, franchising, you've got to know that your product's going to translate to any operator making what you're doing. And right now, or a scratch cook kitchen in both locations, and even just getting our 2 kitchens to not fight over whose food was better in which shop. It was like, come on, ladies, we're all in this together. This is one company. Let's work together to make, the same quality of food. And then can we move that?
Well, in the chat room, we've got a lot of people asking for Virginia locations, and Alicia Greer said she would be your sign speaker at your Bethesda store. I'll put in
good, Alicia.
I'll put in a plug for Rockville because I think District Half Smoke is opening a store there too. So recently,
Okay,
town center there. So
good to know.
that's 2 blocks from my house. That's why I'm
Okay,
suggesting
perfect.
that. But that's great.
Yeah.
So how close are you to doing that?
We're not, in the sense that we don't have a location, but I think we would be, if the right thing came along, we would just work to make it happen. I mean, that's why we spent the last 2 weeks actually using the Chinatown shop to do the bulk of the cooking for Georgetown. So we experimented. And if you came to Georgetown, let me know, because I don't know if you would have known that it wasn't all cooked in the back. So it's something to consider. It's a matter of doing a lot of prepping, vacuum sealing foods and moving them to another location, and then warming them and making them yummier and crispier. So,
well, as you talk, we're getting more location suggestions. So we
okay, good.
In the chat to you, Potomac Village is one that was just brought up by Mahan Tavakoli as our chair. So, and the other thing that they're shouting out about are the mushroom tacos. People are raving about the braised mushroom tacos that you provide.
So that's our standard bearer. We have had the mushroom taco, and we have the mushroom taco and the creamy kale and potato taco on our menu all the time. They have been on the menu from the very first day at Farmers Market until today. They never change. We're able to source organic mushrooms Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, Mother's Earth Organic. And they, or is that what it's called? Mother's Earth Organic, Mother's Organic. Anyway, they really are a standard bearer. They're the simplest taco we make. We take sliced button mushrooms and we braise them with garlic and extra virgin olive oil, and we add some salt. And they're really delicious. And because have that umami flavoring, they're sort of the meatiest taco that we have. We make a roasted tomato salsa roja to go on top, and we pair it with tangy salty feta cheese and some fresh cilantro. And it's really the simplest taco, but for a very long time, I would say it was my favorite taco. But my spirit taco happens to be a summer taco, which is a roasted eggplant taco.
Ooh,
So not everybody loves eggplant.
I
We
do.
make it really good, and it is my favorite. But the mushroom taco is pretty perfect. And that recipe has been shared, and always happy to share. What I often say about Chaia Tacos is there's nothing complicated about them, because the ingredients are fresh and they don't require tons of special things done to them. But to make a mushroom taco, you'd have to make a batch of masa and then roll that into bolitos, and then get your griddle really hot and make your tortillas. There's for step one. Then you got to cook the mushrooms, which take a really long time actually to get down to the right texture of what they should be. And then you have to go and you've got to get all your ingredients for your salsa, and you've got to make your salsa. And then you got to crumble your cheese and chop your garnishes. And before you know it, you're exhausted, and you've only made a mushroom taco. You don't have any of the other flavors. You might as well just go to Chaia and
That's
get
right.
all the different flavors of
Much
tacos.
easier to go to Chai Tacos.
Exactly.
Now, your menu, I remember talking with you about how with people picking things up and then, or delivering things, the tacos sometimes didn't travel well. And so you're looking at what else could you do? And you talked about providing enchiladas. So how was your menu changed during the?
So what's great about what's been great about the pandemic is the opportunity to actually test some ideas that we had, and some expansion of menu ideas, as you said. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, we started an enchilada supper club. And every Tuesday and Thursday, you chose which store you wanted to go pick up your enchilada meal from. And it was a great idea, and people really responded to it. And it was really difficult to be running a location and feeding people, and then coordinating bags and putting stuff in and figuring out all the different marketplace items they'd chosen, because of course we were adding other items to the menu. And then every other restaurant started doing the same thing, and it became a little less interesting to order that every week when you could actually order from somewhere else. And we decided, okay, this supper club idea has probably had its day, but what we can do is, now we've perfected these enchiladas, we can put them on the menu all the time. And they do travel really well, and they do hold really well, and they became something that worked particularly well when we were feeding frontline workers who didn't know when they might know that their shift's going to have some time off between 1 and 2 p.m. But what if they were in the middle of an emergency? Well, those enchiladas would still hold their heat. And so we have put them on, and we've put them on as individual items, and we've put them on as family packs. And it's just been a new thing for us to share with our customer, which has been great.
So what's your most popular enchilada been?
I think the black bean enchilada. I mean, who doesn't like black beans and pepper jack cheese? And I mean, they're super gooey and yummy and melty and comforty and satisfying and good for you. I mean, honestly, it's good for the soul food. And I wouldn't say that the tacos don't travel well. It's a little like pizza, I mean, pizza travels, and it's super satisfying to get a pizza delivered to home, but it's always better if you're at the pizza parlor. I mean, I love our tacos as a catered item, as they come in if you get a big box of them, they look so beautiful. They're just not necessarily as piping hot. You can put them in the oven and warm them up, but no, they travel well, but not as well as maybe the enchiladas might travel better.
So how is your business doing? What kind of sort of revenue hit did you take when the pandemic hit, and percentage wise, are you, how close are you to where you had been before?
Oh, it's been tough. I mean, I think the suburbs have done much better than the cities. Cities have, people just left. I mean, the summer came and people just left. And I think, we're in DC and people have a lot more options here and whatever. But our numbers in Georgetown, the initial store, except for this latest spike in COVID cases, has been getting better and better. And so we've taken a hit. We're not maybe 30% below what we were last year. We're not even to what we were. We still have a ways to go, but we don't have as many staff working. And, we're doing fine from a profit point, a percentage point of, COGS and prime and all that stuff. But it's been tough. I mean, year over year sales is not the same. Again, Chinatown, it's dead downtown. It's, I don't know what the percentage of occupancy is now, but at the nadir, it was 5% of people that work downtown were downtown. So that business was built around the office worker, and the office worker isn't there. But that landlord has been incredibly lovely and generous and kind, and hasn't charged us a dime and doesn't plan to until we renegotiate. They don't want us to leave. They know we're an amenity for the neighborhood. They don't want an empty storefront, and they've watched how hard Suzanne and the staff have worked over there. I've been shepherding the Georgetown store, and she's been shepherding the Chinatown store. So they have very different energies. Where Georgetown has taken a big hit has been that all the students are gone, and that was a big draw for students. It's affordable food. They like the social piece, the social justice piece around it. They like the environmental piece around it. So that's been hard to see them gone, but we have gained new customers. We've gained a lot of people who now have time to walk around in the middle of the day and take a break from their desk, and who want to be by the water or want to come down to, Georgetown's a beautiful neighborhood. So we do get people.
Yeah.
Obviously the weather makes a difference. So
LGW is downsizing our offices, and I was in last week to the office for the first time in months to clean out my office and then move some things around. And it was a ghost town. There's a nice little Italian deli on our block or a couple blocks away. I don't know how they're surviving. Nobody was there. There was no street traffic at all. So
I know. It's very sad.
In these conversations, one of the first people we talked with was Cathy Hollinger, who's the head of the Restaurant Association in Metropolitan Washington.
She's amazing. She is amazing.
Devastating numbers on what's happening. We're having her come back in December to sort of give us an update on where we are. Yeah, she is amazing. But the industry is
such an advocate for our industry. Yeah. I mean, I think Chaia is going to survive. I don't feel that we're not going to. I feel that we are, and that I'm really glad that we kept our muscles flexed and our wheels greased and all of that. But to have an advocate like Cathy Hollinger behind this group, and to have her here in DC, her energy level is just amazing. And she writes these recaps of what's happening. We did get, a really big win here in DC today, and the mayor, I guess it's the mayor, I want to say the mayor is funding here it is, it's a Business Support Grants Amendment Act, and it's creating a $100 million grant program for small businesses. So guess what? 15% of it's going to be allocated towards small businesses owned by women and minorities. So we will try to get first in line to get some of those funds, because it's called the Bridge Fund, and it's a public health emergency fund. And anybody who's a small business owner on this call should know about it, learn about it. Happy to share the link on that in the chat when I can. And thanks to Cathy for letting us know right away. So
that's great.
Pretty great.
Montgomery County is looking at, I just read, with the increased shutdowns that they're doing now, they're looking at a restaurant assistance program to the particular restaurants in Bethesda, but throughout the county as well. So it's good to see that local government stepping up and helping out, particularly when the federal government has really just walked away from any kind of COVID relief. They need to get back to it. So,
Right. And I mean, even the COVID, even while I'm thinking about the PPP and the tax liability piece of the PPP, which has not actually been figured out quite yet. Like, are we going to be liable to pay, tax liability on rent and insurance and payroll and all this stuff? I mean, that's going to take us, we don't have a lot of extra money coming in. We're barely making, making ends meet. So we're just trying to stay afloat and try to ride the storm out as best we can so that.
so Jenny, go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
I was just say Jenny Bielfield just sent in that they have set the date for the Ashante Green Chaia Taco Dance in DC, Washington Performing Arts release for December 4th at 7 p.m. So
Excellent.
you need to plug that way as well. I do want to talk about.
And I'll send the bridge fund here. There we go. Okay. You want to talk about
when we were talking earlier before the call started, you kept calling it Chaia, and I said, was it Chaia or Chaia Tacos? And you said, well, for branding, let's call it Chaia Tacos, but Chipotle was Chipotle Grill before they became Chipotle, and that your vision is basically to do the same thing, to become Chaia at some point and have a national chain of your stores. It's a remarkable undertaking.
Well, so essentially we are Chaia. Like our umbrella corporation is Chaia LLC, and then we run two businesses under that LLC. One is Chaia Georgetown, and one is the location downtown. Initially, it was Chaia with a tagline, "Farm to Taco." Because that seemed overused, we decided to rebrand our logo from Chaia with a small farm to taco to Chaia Tacos. But it is officially it's Chaia. Yes, the initial goal was to replicate this small business into multiple small businesses across multiple states.
So you started this with the idea of we're going to go big. We're going to do something.
We started it with a game plan to do that. Yes, we've had a number of setbacks, and I would say that coronavirus has been the biggest one yet.
That's
I am back in that shop making tacos half the time, not filling them.
Or that's putting very bold, Bettina.
That's very what?
Very bold.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to think big. Think big or go big or go home, right? What's that phrase? Go big or go home?
My motto is always think bigger. Think bigger.
Think bigger. Yeah. I mean, there's these downtown bid is putting together. They put all those sort of yard signs out downtown to just boost, I think, morale, and a quote that I had got put onto one of them, and that's floating around downtown on these yard signs, and it says, quote, "Yes, say it more often." So same idea, just go big, right? Again, I don't want that epithet to say she owned a taco shop or two. I would like to leave the kids a trust fund, a taco trust fund. How about that?
So what leadership lessons have you learned over the last few months? Again, you've sort of gone on a roller coaster, and it's been fascinating to sort of watch that and listen to that. But what,
I think learned? Resilience has been huge. There've been a lot of things that have knocked me down in my life, and I think for the most part they've made me stronger. Doesn't mean I don't fall apart occasionally, but I feel like I was prepared to take on this monster global event that's happened. And maybe that is just a certain sense of resilience and strength. I keep myself fit both physically and mentally. I think that helps. I think reaching out to others when you need support is really important. I believe in showing people your fallibilities and asking for help when you don't know things. And this has been a very steep learning curve. The whole portion of it. I'd never started a business before starting Chaia. So everything, it's just continually a big, steep hill to climb, Sisyphean or however, Sisyphusian or whatever.
Well, I hope Alicia Greater Washington's been there for you. Have there been any members that you've reached out to or have reached out to you
Oh,
in the last few
it's
months?
just been, it's just been an amazing group of people. I feel like I could probably reach out to anybody, even if I didn't know them, if I felt that they could be helpful. But, in my own class, I've had people who've reached out to support from Lisa Wise at Flock to Jenny Billfield at Washington Performing Arts to my amazing Red Mind Trust. We did have an in-person gathering in the backyard of one of our members in Alexandria, and we sat around a fire pit, socially distanced, and drank wine and ate empanadas and talked politics and shoot the stuff. And it feels really good to have a new group of friends and people that you can trust to have your back. So I think that that's one of the things that Great Leadership Greater Washington has actually proven, that you can actually have that in your network of community that's a business community. When we were starting this business, we only had one negative, and it's someone we brought in as a partner. I really can't believe we made that mistake, but there's only one person that said to us along the way, you're two women starting this business, you're gonna have a bullseye on your back, so watch out. And we ended up firing him a couple of years later because it was that's not the way it was at all. I think everybody was willing to help. And in the restaurant industry here in DC, is surprisingly warm and friendly. It's a friendly competition between us. I don't want to see my fellow restaurateurs who are doing good work do poorly. I want them to shine, and I want them to lift me up, and I want to lift them up. So it's actually a really nice place to do business. It's actually been a really nice place to do business.
So how can we, as individuals, as an organization, help you? And a subset of that, how can we invest in Chaia?
Just come eat tacos, order tacos for takeout, pick them up, talk about it, give me good neighborhoods to go to. You're all amazing.
And are you doing another round of funding or?
Not yet.
Not
We
yet.
have had, we actually, the very first, so in 2014, we did our first round of funding, and we actually got the monies we were looking for in a matter of 3 weeks or something crazy.
Wow. And can I ask what it took to sort of get started like that? The amount?
I do actually. We do have some. We decided early on, much to our lawyer's chagrin, we decided to move from a structure that just included friends and family to one that included strategic investors, and that meant we had to rewrite the memorandum of the memorandums, and it was a lot more legal. And all of our investors now don't just own a piece of Chaia Georgetown, but they own a piece of our company. And we have some really amazing and supportive mentors and folks on our list of family members. So when we went out the first time around and we raised money, we actually met that original group. They were there were 3 private equity folks in New York. We went up after market one day. We were at the White House Farmers Market. We packed up our food. We packed up our packaging. We put them in, sturdy bags, got on the train. And the next day they came to lunch. I used to have an apartment in New York, and we recreated a Chaia meal in this apartment, and we sat and we talked to them for 2-3 hours, and They came in and they came back. Every one of our investors from our first seed fund came back for our second seed round.
No.
And we actually brought in 7 new investors, almost solely local investors in our second round. And we will go for another round eventually. It would, but I don't know what that looks like yet. I mean, we were looking towards what would a Series A funding look like, and then the shit hit the fan, and the global pandemic happened, and life took a big turn. So,
Well, Bettina, I absolutely love this conversation.
well, thank you.
Loved all of my, again, not a lot, but my talks with you over the last few months, and getting to know you through the class, and actually getting introduced to you by Liz Norton, a good friend of both of ours, who first told me that we had to accept you into the class.
Well, thanks to Liz.
Great lady. She's left the region now. It's in Brooklyn, but we'll stay in touch with her.
Yeah.
But let me again. I've loved this conversation. I really enjoy your story. I enjoy your friendship, and let me leave you with the final word now.
Well, thank you to everybody here. I just applaud you for the work you're doing. I can't even imagine what it's like doing class of 2021 all online virtually. It must be, I mean, Chase and Debbie, who are sort of black squares here, I know they're there. Just, wow. It's an amazing organization. I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad I spent the time. I'm sad that we missed out on the very final months of it in person. And I do hope that when things get back to normal, our group can come together for some sort of a retreat.
We will do that, yes.
But we got a lot out of what we got out of it, and it will continue. And you make such a great effort in making sure that it does. So thank you for that.
Bettina, thank you very much. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And I want to thank PNC Bank for sponsoring these Frontline Conversations. They're a big supporter of Leadership Greater Washington. We're thankful for their support over the years. So everybody have a great day.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. That's right. We'll have another Frontline Conversation after Thanksgiving. We won't have one next week, but happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bettina.
Take care.